Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is you're tuned in to the Story Cafe, where on the menu today is sales and more sales, but really important sales, because today we're talking to Leadsift and Alex Field. And I think you're going to be interested because I've had conversations with Alex and I've poured over the YouTube videos that Alex and the founder of the company have produced, really trying to get my head around how Leadsift magically produces the kind of leads that it does, but it's really not magic. And that's what we're going to really dig in today. We're going to dig into the how it works and why it works so well. And let me just read one thing before I really give Alex the floor and give him a really proper introduction. This is why we're talking about Leadsift today. And this is something that I heard the founder of Leadsift say. If I could just find that sheet of paper. Leadsift customers have said that Leadsift provides higher value leads than even their own inbound marketing leads. My head was kind of spinning when I heard that. I was like, whoa, wait, what? So Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Art. I'm very excited to, I know whenever we have a conversation, it's always very insightful. So excited to share that with your audience.
Well, fantastic. And Alex, tell them what you do at least if you're the growth expert there. I mean, and that's what your focus is, helping businesses grow by helping them understand how to use Leadsift and optimize its value.
Yeah, exactly. So growth is a great word because it's both for our own company growth and how we can kind of take the next steps, and then also how other companies that can leverage Leadsift to help achieve their growth goals. So growth, as you said, it kind of ties in both sides of the coin, and is a very great descriptor of what I do on the day-to-day.
Yeah, fantastic. And you know, Ed, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the founder of The Art of Standing Out, where we use storytelling to help businesses market better and sell more stuff. And in order to use story to sell more, it's less about telling stories and more about listening to their story and knowing their narrative almost as they know it themselves. So when you tell a story, their ears perk up because you're speaking to them in a language that they get. It's that connecting of their narrative with your story that really is the magic. And you can't do that unless you know the ICP. Right. And that's the ideal customer profile. That's doing the work to really understand them. And I think the same thing is true with Leadsift. The power in this technology really works best, and you get amazing ROI out of your investment when you've done the work to define who your ideal customer is. And Alex, I know you really focus on that in the conversations we've had. That's helping your customers get their head around refining that, so when you put it into the system, they get the kind of outputs that really help them grow.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that, and you talk about inbound marketing, and one of the challenges with inbound marketing in some cases is you can't control who finds you. So as much as you want to be targeted, you put out content, those leads that come in, and I have had conversations even today where they have inbound lead flows coming in, but it's not from the people that they want to have conversations with. And so that presents a number of different challenges, and the cost of acquisition goes up because you're acquiring leads or interest of people that you can't ultimately sell to. And that's when Leadsift becomes really interesting and starting to refine that ICP, so that instead of being reactive to the people that are only finding you, and that's going to be a percentage of the market, you can start to be proactive in going out and identifying those folks based on signals that they're leaving across the web that indicate that they may be likely interested in your solution.
That's it shortens the cycle time to revenue, right? When you don't have to sift through all of the foo-foo, right? Those people that really were not your ideal customer, but they responded to your inbound marketing. Leadsift is going only after that ideal that's well-defined, that is showing intent that they're making a move toward your competitor, toward a comment that they've hired somebody that is really demonstrating that they're moving in a direction because that new hire is going to help them get there, and your product helps that new hire accomplish even more. So let's talk a little bit about what is Leadsift. It's a sales intelligence platform for B2B companies, helping to determine what?
Yeah, that's I would even take it one step further and try and in hitting our ICP, even just say Leadsift is an intent data provider. So ultimately, that ends up turning into intelligence that sales can use. But our core offering is intent data, where we are, rather than collecting kind of IP or cookie-based data, going out to collect individual signals from people across the web, and that could span from any kind of public source. And if we think about public web documents and what those look like, that could be it's in the high millions. So any number of documents that we're looking at, but really taking that and going out and looking for specific things that are happening within your ICP and what they're looking at, and then turning that into intelligence that can be used to better market and sell to accounts that are likely interested in your solution.
And often when I'm thinking of storytelling, when I think of the empathy mapping or the ICP, I'm thinking of an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Within Leadsift, you have the individual within an organization, and you have the organization, which you have to well define as well, right, in order for Leadsift to do what it does. So you have two categories that you're really building and then inserting into Leadsift to get the value out. Is that right?
Absolutely. So you need to not only think about who the people are that are going to be expressing interest in, whether it's a competitor or topics or keywords that are related to your business, but also where do those individuals fall in a business context? If you only sell to Fortune 100, it doesn't help you to identify Joe Smith's pizza shop down the street that may be looking for your product.
Yeah.
So what we need to do, even though that title may be in that company, we do need to start to refine that based on company attributes that indicate that they're going to be a better fit for us. So it is multifaceted, and not only are we looking for the right titles, but are they in the right industry? Are they in the right company size? Are they in the right geographic location? If you only sell to US-based companies, but we identify a company showing intent in the UK, that doesn't really provide you any value. And that's coming back to the challenge with inbound, is that you can't control if you see that, where Leadsift can actually limit that to your ICP across those people and companies to make sure that that data is as relevant as possible for you.
So it's Leadsift doesn't compete with inbound as much as Leadsift is a layer above inbound that says, keep producing amazing content and let people from all over, wherever they are, because you don't know if somebody in the UK knows somebody in New York, right, or Toronto that is your ideal customer. So put it out there, but then allow us, Leadsift, to take your refined definition of the business and the people in that business that are your targets, and let us focus on finding what their intent is. So content is good. Content is still king.
Yeah.
Leadsift takes the content that has made people respond to a need and find them when their need is greatest. And I think that's the thing that I think really kind of rocks my world when I think of Leadsift. It's the fact that as a salesperson, we're always prospecting, and we find somebody today that's really ideal, but their timeline is 18 months because they just got an ERP system. They're busy, right? 18 months from now, maybe they'll have a window. The product you're selling will have evolved, and they will have evolved, and you're hoping that in 18 months they're still there. Leadsift says, no, we just produced 100 leads for you.
Yep.
And they're all identified as ready now. They're on the journey to looking for a product like yours, and they've shown intent and sentiment. That is really, it's almost, it's magical when you think about it, about how salespeople customarily work.
Right.
They set up a spam cannon and they just fire it out at everybody, hoping that somebody is ready now, because I've got a quota to make this month for this quarter, and I got to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Leadsift takes the anxiety, perhaps, out of the art of the sale, because it eliminates a lot of the prospecting is never eliminated. It refines the prospecting process because your prospects are already on the journey.
Mhm.
They're identified where they are on the journey. So your competitors are still prospecting the old way. You, with Leadsift outputs, can say, well, look, I see Alex and he's already on the journey and he's here. So when I engage, as I say, Alex, so I understand that you just hired Joe and he's to do this. Let me tell you about my product and how it helps you and Joe accomplish more. And the decision maker you're calling on kind of perks up and says, I don't know how you knew that. Pretty amazing, because what you just said, if you can help Joe accomplish more, then the $85,000 we're paying him, we've just gotten ROI, confidence, because of the product that you're offering us. How much does it cost? And that's it.
Right.
So let's talk more about Leadsift, and I've written down 3 KPIs, and I'll just read them off now, but then we can take them individually, and you can go into some depth in explaining in greater detail how Leadsift does this. The sales intelligence platform for B2B companies helps you determine which accounts salespeople should be selling to, who in that account they should be talking to, and when they should talk to them. I mean, what more could you ask for? That's pretty amazing. It's
Yep.
So you found out which accounts, who in the account, and when you should approach them, and pretty much giving you a script of what you should even be saying to them. It's almost like if you were value-based pricing, your pricing would be $10,000 a month, because it would be one person with a green visor on doing it would probably be 5 people with green visors on doing the work to determine what Leadsift does, and it doesn't take breaks, and it works 365 days a year, producing these kinds of outputs. So talk a little bit about the which accounts you should sell to, who in those accounts you should talk to, and when you should talk to them. Those are 3 highly desirable things, that the only thing salespeople want. You're producing them. How do you deliver those? And when I say how, it's not what's going on under the covers in the AI and the machine learning. It's from the reporting to the action that the salesperson takes.
Yeah. So I think it's important just to contextualize where people typically start when we think of prospecting. And so talking about which accounts they want to go after and who within the accounts and when they should do that isn't new by any means. The way that that's typically done is you sign into a CRM, you say, oh, looks like I want to go after this account, or I want to go after this person, and I think today's the day I'm going to do it. Or you have that list delivered to you by whether it's marketing or sales leader or whatever. So that concept isn't necessarily unique in the sense of what Leadsift does, but we take it to that next level. Instead of saying, well, today I feel like I should reach out to XYZ account, what we actually want to be is data driven around which accounts are likely more receptive to what we have to offer. Mm-hmm. And then once we understand that, taking that a step deeper and saying, okay, well, we know that this account is likely interested in what we have to offer based on all of the signals that we're picking up on. Where are those signals coming from within that account? Now, one of the things, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, was around inbound and Leadsift. And to your point, they are very complementary. So one of the things that we're always encouraging clients to do is to look at the overlay in data. The reality is, when we think about intent, there's no single source of intent that's going to ultimately tell you when someone's ready to buy, unless you pick up the phone and you say, hey, Alex, I'm ready to buy. And there, technology is not going to be able to replace that. So what we need to do is try and predict who's more likely to buy. And if we look at a single source, we'll have one side of that picture. But the more data sources we can bring together to get more context around where people are at, the better. So for Leadsift, our ultimate goal and the way that we track intent is by a number of different ways, whether it's people that are engaging with competitors that indicate that they have a competitive product. It could even be complementary companies that you've worked with in the past and done implementations with. It could be topic-based, where one of the things that we like to think about is you could be creating great content on your site, but you could not have the reach or the ability to drive that traffic back to that content. So we can actually go and interject and steal traffic from other pieces of content that people have found engaging, and use that to help determine how we should engage with accounts and what's most relevant to them. And then ultimately, the when really comes down to when we look at all of these data sources together and we start to see what's happening within an account, and we've seen them engaging with a competitor. We've seen them land on an ebook that we've just published that's talking about how to evaluate XYZ solution. We've seen them, maybe they've come in and requested a demo. Like once all of those actions have started to happen, now we know where people are in the buying journey. And so really what it becomes, and I think from a storytelling perspective, it's really interesting in how do you ingest that data and take it, but then how do you figure out what that story is with that account and where they're at, because not everyone's going to be the same, right? And I know when we think about buying intent, we want to think that everyone is ready to buy tomorrow, but the case is that's not the reality. So what we need to do is we need to then figure out where these people are at based on contextualizing that information that we have and bringing as many sources together as possible, and then meet them where they're at. So if I know, Art, that you're interested in storytelling, maybe I lead with a piece of content that we wrote about storytelling. And if I know that you're interested in booking more meetings, maybe I lead with how we've helped clients book more meetings versus storytelling. So you can contextualize that and almost be more human in that outreach when you're engaging, so that one, they may not buy from you tomorrow when you pick up the phone, in the example that you gave, although we wish, but you can start that, and then people will meet you where they're at, right? If you provide value, then they will come to you when they know that you can serve that need that they have.
Well, and I think my experience in sales is that the only time I've really won is when my approach began with showing that I had value.
Mm-hmm.
And I liken it to when I looked as smart or smarter than the people that are on the team of the executive that I'm calling on, because I had done my research to know that much about them, that they said, well, sure, come on in here. Because that come on in means that I don't have to pay you to come in here. You can tell me what you know, right? You can tell me what you see and what you think of the challenges that I share. And if you have credible processes and things to offer, I'll let you stay around and maybe we'll buy something. But if you don't bring that value, you never really gain it. And what you're describing is really, I read that quote at the beginning that I think is the sizzle. Leadsift customers have said that Leadsift provides higher value leads than even their own inbound marketing. And it cast that comment in kind of a competitive light, like we're better than inbound marketing. And what you just said, Alex, I think is really important. It's not that at all. Yes, we do, because we bring you into the customer journey exactly where they are on that journey. Inbound marketing doesn't do that. However, if you treated the Leadsift outputs and the inbound marketing outputs you got and anything else, that the email campaigning that you've got, and you treat them as different circles, and then you move them together to see where there's overlap, then in that Venn diagram, that's where the story is. That's where the story that you're going to tell to your customer to get access to them, to have a real genuine conversation, because they're going to reel back in their seat and say, I don't know how you know this, but we really want to talk to you because you sound like you understand us at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of value do you have? We're going to invite you in so we can discover what that value is. So the Venn diagram, and it could be there's instances where inbound is a bigger circle than Leadsift, or the email campaigning is bigger than the other two. But having them all working in concert is like having an orchestra. And I think this is where I really admire as a growth expert at Leadsift. We've had conversations where you said things like, I'm working with a startup that's trying to determine what VCs might do with this or that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's using Leadsift to find sentiment and intent of the guys in Silicon Valley that will invest in this startup company. And so it's a sales effort. That startup wants to sell them their idea to the investor, but Leadsift is the portal that they are, like the binoculars that they have, to really explore what those investors are saying is their intention about everything. And those that are saying anything about something that relates to that startup is who they're going to call on. The technology is amazing, but the ability to think creatively about how to leverage the technology is really where the power lies. And you do this every day, all the time. What's the cycle time to take me or someone else that's listening live or listening on replay to come up to speed, to get their head around thinking creatively to optimize the tool, Leadsift, to maximize their engagement in the field? Is it 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months? Some people never get it.
I would love to say that everyone does get it. I think there is a percentage of people that a good analogy is kind of a present with a bow already wrapped on it, and it's just delivered to you in the sense that this lead has been looking at a competitor, they're going to immediately buy my solution. And although we wish that was the case, again, it isn't. So I think there's always that percentage, and depending on where you're at as a company, it often reflects kind of the situation that you're in. Where if you have time to sit back and look at the data over a period of time, start to benchmark and see what's happening. For example, a great analogy that I think about is for some of our clients, competitive engagements are their highest performing intent signal. For others, it's job postings. For others, it's topic based. Now, in order to really have that idea, you can't take the data, send out an email, and come to that conclusion. There is a baseline of time that's needed to ultimately refine and start to see how people are progressing through your funnel based on the specific market that you sell into. So the short answer is, from a Leadsift perspective, you can start to get data relatively quickly. Now, how long it takes for that to actually start to refine and get to the point where it's delivering those insights and you can make those contextual stories out of them, it depends on a number of different factors around the number of channels you have, that time to deal that you typically go through, or time to opportunity. And so I would be lying if I said that there's the same answer for everyone, but you can start to see trends happening relatively quickly in the data if you're looking for the right things.
I think that the word trends is probably the key word in that, you can get so excited about a technology like Leadsift because it is doing something that we couldn't do just a few years ago to aid the sales team and shorten the cycle time to revenue.
Mm-hmm.
If that sentence is all you say about Leadsift, then you're saying, oh yeah, let's go, baby. This is going to be exciting. But I think the second layer is that it's going to drop me into the customer journey ahead of where my competitors are that aren't using this technology. But how I interpret the data and how the analysis that I do of the data to discern the story I should be telling when I enter the conversation. Mm-hmm. It takes patience, is what I'm going to say. I think it takes patience because you have to, and you have to already know the customer. You defined your ideal customer. You know their narrative really well. Now you've found one that's there on the journey.
Can I give you
Sure.
another example here, because this is, I think, fascinating in the sense of there's the example of time that's needed to see trends. So we have a client, they are in a business that previously was doing something else, because of COVID, transitioned into creating custom masks, as an example. The challenge that they had was they knew that big corporations were looking to buy masks. They didn't know who within the organization was actually looking for that. So they had some inbound interest, they had gained some traction, but it was coming from a number of different places within an organization. So what they knew was they knew they needed to be at a certain level within an organization for that to be relevant, but they didn't exactly know what function that was going to be. They leveraged Leadsift to put in those search terms around the face mask, PPE, all of those things, start to see what data came back, and then looked for places that they were getting positive responses. With that, they were then able to take a broader net and refine that based on the interest that they were seeing, so that instead of now looking for everyone in an organization, they can start to hone in on a few key areas where they're seeing the most engagement. So what happens is, if you were to come to us and say, yeah, we sell to this based on 2 leads that we just closed, they may have potentially missed out on all of these other signals that they didn't know about. And so in that case, they're coming in kind of eyes wide open and understanding that they don't have that kind of target ICP defined. However, using the data to help dictate getting to that point. So that's kind of the time and I guess patience that's needed to be able to ultimately get to the point where this can just become automatic for you in generating successful results.
So to use an Abraham Maslow analogy, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Leadsift is not that. Leadsift is kind of like a chameleon in the one sense that, depending on what you're trying to source for, you could align it with that intent, that your intent to go find it. It's like a bloodhound. I'm going to turn it loose. I'm looking for this. Here's the piece of cloth. Sniff it. Now the bloodhound goes and finds the person wearing that piece of cloth. Leadsift can do the same thing. If you define it well and you know what you want to discover, Leadsift will help you find it. That's the, I think it's analog to what we think about robots and the future. You know, what will humans do when the robots are here? Well, Leadsift is like a robot, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Do we even need humans anymore? Yeah, absolutely you do, because we are the holy grail that tells it what to do, and then gets the result and says, okay, let's refine it. Let's do it again. Right. And let's refine it and point it at something else. And now you've got this array of data. And I think that's where the humanization of the process is so important. Computers aren't there yet. But Leadsift has got enough of that technology in it to automate the process, and that's where the cycle time reduction happens. And it sounds like it's not the tool that a team of 15 salespeople have a key to Leadsift and they interact with it when they have a need. Sounds like there's an intermediary that salesperson comes to the person and says, look, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. What do we do? And that person who has a relationship with Leadsift and understands it at an intimate level says, well, based on what you just told me, I think we should try this. The salesperson goes away and does what it does. Leadsift gets the inputs and churns array and looks at 70 million different points and then produces a report that then that person and the sales rep get together and analyze and says, what else you got? Oh, we've got an email campaign we did last week. Oh, okay, what do you got? And we are doing inbound marketing all the time. I'll get that from marketing. What do you got? And that's where the Venn diagram mashing up comes from. So it really becomes a team effort. And anyone that would think that they could invest in Leadsift and then it's going to magically sit in the corner and just produce, it's going to be hearts and flowers every day. You still have to do the work.
You do. And that is what I always come back to, and we've talked about this as well, Art, is like, if you have data is great, but it is data. It gets you a portion of the way there. It does not get you all the way there. So that work is needed to ultimately get it to the point where you are seeing those end results. If you don't do anything with it, you will not see results. It doesn't, and that is, I sometimes it feels like that's a bit of a shock in terms of this idea of buying intent, but that is the reality. It is data. It is a point that helps us predict where someone is at. And when we bring as many of those points together, we're in a much better position to serve that buyer or that potential prospect. But if we just leave it and say, yep, that doesn't look interesting, the likelihood is that nothing will come of that, unless by chance they happen to come back and find you by an inbound channel. But if they don't, they're going to go off and they're going to find or scratch that itch somewhere else, and you'll never know. And so that is a very key point when we think about any data sources. It is only data, and if you don't do anything with it, it still is only data. It won't turn into deals and opportunities.
Is it reasonable to say that the reason that it's not called lead mining is that the machine is doing the mining. The human has to do the sifting of the rocks that come. I'm panning for gold is analogous to in the river, and I'm sifting that pan, and I'm looking for. I'll know it when I see it, right? And you have to sift. The technology mines all the data and presents it to you, but the gold is in the pan and you've got to pull it out. When you find that nugget, then it's a win. And you call them up and say, go ahead.
I think this, just to add clarity to what that pan is action, right? It's moving it back and forth and seeing what happens. And that could be targeting people with an ad or targeting a company with an ad. It could be an email campaign. It could be a sales interaction. But the key there is that when you go panning for gold, and I have never done this, so I don't know if this is accurate, but if you're going and picking up rocks and trying to find it, you are actively moving that back and trying to see what sticks. The same thing needs to happen with the data. And that is the action piece of it, where that's the only way that you will find gold. If you just take a pile of rocks, nothing will happen until you start to sift through it.
Creativity is the word that keeps bubbling up in my thinking now about Leadsift, because the more creative you are in the way you think about the mission, the more you can leverage Leadsift to give you intelligence that your competitors won't have, that are not using Leadsift, because it's like the company that didn't know who they should be calling on, but they use Leadsift to find out who they should be calling on. It's like the startup that needed funding and knew they needed to go to the Scions of the venture capitalist world, but they pointed Leadsift at them to find out which one was predisposed to lend them the money, and only went to those.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing. And if the only commodity that we can't control is time, Leadsift gives us time. And if you gain time, you can sell more. And in theory, you should overachieve your goals because you've got more selling time, because you're outselling your competition, because the intelligence that you're entering the conversations with, the stories that you're sharing with the clients you want to bring into the fold are more compelling, because you have more crisp and clean data to know what stories to tell. And when to tell them and who to tell them to. That's just amazing. And we started our conversation talking about the ICP, the ideal customer profile, and defining that. But if you're a startup and you want to get the TAM, the total addressable market, Leadsift can help you do that. right? And help you do that in a really sophisticated way. You know, there's two pictures. There's pictures of Leadsift doing this work. There's a picture of a guy with a green visor and cuffs on and poring over paper and reports or Googling all day into the wee hours of the morning. And that's time that you have to spend, or somebody has to spend to do that. Whereas just knowing what you want and knowing how to define that for Leadsift gets that report for you. Because it's analogous to having 10 people poring over 70 million bits of information to find what you want. And how long? Well, here's a real world example. I wish I could bring this up on the screen right now. I think it was 2 days ago, I saw something online. It was a computer that had been trained through AI and machine learning to know what a brain tumor looked like. And they're different types. And there were 63 physicians that were brain surgeons. The computer resolved, after looking at our x-ray, resolved 83% of those and said, this is the course of action that we will take to excise the tumor and cure the patient. 83% of the time, the computer was right and did it in like 2 hours. Right, and the variable was the number of frames of different patients that they looked at. The 63 physicians took like 16 hours and were only 63% accurate. So time again enters into the conversation. The computer has been trained to see what it knows is a tumor that is malignant. Mm-hmm. The physicians, all 63 of them, have the same training, but the accuracy of Leadsift is like the computer in this analogy. And the cost of getting the value, it's not life or death. Well, for the salesperson, it could be, but it's not life or death. But if you just look at the cycle time, 2 hours versus almost a whole day with 63 people, what did that cost? Mm-hmm. So it's cost benefit is really the value. Cost benefit is why you buy Leadsift, because you get ROI right away. Yep. But Leadsift should make you more creative as you think about the total addressable market. Because if I have a new product, I have to reassess the total addressable market for that. And I've got to perhaps redefine my ideal customer. Leadsift happens to help both of those things. It's companies that are not using technology like Leadsift today are not putting themselves in the optimal position to achieve ROI, and they're spending more on ROE. The return on effort for somebody without Leadsift is up here. Somebody with Leadsift, they're spending less effort and less time. And if effort and time are money, the ROI on Leadsift is, you know better than I do, but that's for another show, I think. Definitely. There's so much that you can do with Leadsift that I know the first time I heard it, I kind of walked away and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I think it was probably the third time I talked to you that I really got a grasp of how to engage with the technology and optimize it. And having said that, I'm hoping that those listening live and watching on replay glean from our conversation the power of this listening technology to work in concert with your inbound marketing, your email campaigning, and all the other things that you do. And if you're like me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, you're going to want to hear from an Alex Field again to say, okay, let's drill down a little more. Can we focus on maybe a case study and talk about that? Because then it becomes more the practical application of the technology in a specific case is easier to wrap your head around, because we've thrown around a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts, but I'd love to invite you back at some point in the future when we can talk a specific case and you can present it to our audience, because you're doing the same work. Salespeople are doing the same thing. ICP, TAM, ABM, we have to know those. We have to find the answers, solve for those equations, work in that area. Leadsift enters the conversation and helps us accomplish those things in a more elegant way. And coming back to talk about that elegance, I'd love to have you do that, because I know that I'm intrigued and want to know more. I always like being smarter. In spite of the struggle, I always want to be smarter. And I know Leadsift can help me. And more importantly, I keep saying Leadsift, but it's Alex, the growth expert from Leadsift, that does this every day and works with all manner and type of customer. If you're not aware of Leadsift, I think what I should do for you is put the domain name in there, and it's leadsift.com.
That is correct. Yep.
And anything coming up soon at Leadsift? I know you have a show that you do for Leadsift, and the founder does a show. You guys are pretty active in sharing the value of the product, and everybody constantly talking about it. Who or when is something coming up that we can tune into?
So we should have an interesting webinar series with, we have a number of guests planned I think it'll probably be the third week of November. We're going to look at multiple sources of intent. So today we spent a lot of time talking about Leadsift intent and kind of inbound. But there's other types of intent when we think about first party, second party, third party intent, and different variations on each of those. So what we want to try and do in everything that we create, we're trying to bring a bipartisan lens to it, and not trying to say that one is better than the other. Each has their own unique value. And so that will be really interesting in learning more about what those other channels look like, talking a little bit about how you can bring them together. And then the other thing that you mentioned was around our podcast. And one of the things that we found was there's no shortage of sales and marketing podcasts, but oftentimes it kind of skimps on the actual results or what people are doing on the day-to-day. And so what we wanted to do was try and eliminate the fluff of those podcasts and drill into actual things that marketers are doing on a day-to-day basis, a little bit selfishly, and understanding what are kind of the results that they're seeing. And when we get on a conversation with someone who's thinking about doing an event strategy, and we had Harmony from Outreach talk about how they transitioned from in-person to virtual, so try to understand what those experiences are like and what the challenges are, what the results they can expect, so that not only are we talking about a data conversation, but we're also talking about a broader business conversation around how we can help progress those conversations forward and help them drive more business as the ultimate outcome.
That's fantastic. And I know when I went to Alex's show, on the banner at the top of the screen, I saw a banner that said, "Enough with the fluff." So when he says there's no fluff or foo-foo in the presentations, they're giving you real value. So use that domain name at the scrolling across the bottom of the screen to find out more about Leadsift. It's a tool we all should not just know about, but we should find a way to get the companies that we represent to bring on board, because if we want to accomplish more in challenging times, those that thrive and not just survive the pandemic are going to be the ones that really optimize and perform at the highest level. Leadsift can help you accomplish that, and that's certainly, and let me say it again, Leadsift is a great technology. And Alex, the growth expert at Leadsift, can show you how to optimize it to work for you and your business. So give Alex a call. There's the domain name. Alex, thank you so much. I think I promised you 20 minutes, and I think we've been on for 45. So thank you for the extended play version. And I hope we have an opportunity to do it again.
Definitely. No, thanks for having me, Art. And I think this is a common thread for us. We usually jump on with kind of 20, 30 minutes and end up going a little bit over. And I always enjoy it. So time well spent for sure.
Fantastic. Once again, my name is Art Jones. I'm the founder of The Art of Standing Out, where we talk to standout individuals who are doing amazing work in the business world. And tonight we had Alex Field talking about Leadsift, and hopefully we'll have him again and talk more. Until next time, everybody, bye for now.